good evening, and welcome to another episode of Thought That Get Results. I'm Everett Weber Herbert, and as per usual, we're here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line? Address it to the Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis, or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. With regard to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You got a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pen, pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that when you get on the show, you're well organized, and so that we can take as many calls as possible, take as little time as you can. We ask only, first of all, that you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem not within our broadcast standards. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. Tonight, the heavyweights are in. Dr. Patricia Bartlett, good evening.
Good evening, Webo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the entire listening and viewing audiences. Mr. Martin and Pam down in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Miss Henry, I haven't heard her for a while in St. Kitts there. I would like to just say a good evening to you, Miss Henry, if you hope you're listening, and my cousin Cynric as well. And further, if I may, I would like to just extend a good evening greetings, or it's almost morning anyway, to my number one fan over there in England and all the other people in the UK who stay up religiously to listen to the issues that we debate here on a regular basis, at least particularly on a Tuesday, and I think I understand on Wednesdays as well. Good evening to everyone, and I hope you would listen to Webo, and I want to just reinforce the same invitation that he normally would give for people to call in and hear their views. I know from time to time I would not necessarily complain, but make an observation that people would want to discuss these issues, off here, but I don't like to do things off here because I'm always getting misquoted, and I don't like that. So if you want to engage me in particular, please call in and let us have a debate on radio that everybody could hear the views. Thank you.
Conrad Nye-Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and a pleasant good evening to my colleague here at the table. Good evening to everyone in tune to this program, to all my friends in the international circle, my brethren in Connecticut, my friends in Montreal and Toronto, my kids also in Montreal who are invited to tune in to this program. A pleasant good evening to everyone. Webo, I'm happy to be here again. It's actually my first event on radio for 2019, so I would like to wish everyone a happy and prosperous 2019, and I do hope we can have just a little more tolerance and goodwill coming from everyone, of course, in an effort to improve our social intercourse and well-being here on Ireland. Webo, thanks for the invitation again, and I look forward to a good debate tonight. Thank you.
Ted Hobson, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and good evening to my fellow panelists. And as usual, Webo, I want to give my greetings to all the people around the world who listen to this program every Tuesday night. And it's always an honor for me to be here to speak to people and to respond to their inquiries and so forth. And I'm looking forward to an interesting debate tonight, Webo. Thank you.
The Honorable Spencer Brand, good evening.
Good evening, Webo, and a very pleasant good evening to my colleagues around the table. Let me say a very pleasant good evening to all those who are listening and viewing to this edition of Let's Talk tonight. I want to say to those persons who are feeling a bit down tonight for one reason or the other, they might have had a bad day or a bad week. Just want to say to them that, stay positive. I want to say to those persons who are in the mourning column tonight for the loss of a loved one, a friend, a colleague, I hope that they can remember their loved one with fond memories, and certainly want to offer them our sincere condolences. to those who are celebrating tonight, whether it's a birthday, a wedding anniversary, or certainly some accomplishment in their life, certainly want to congratulate them, and I hope that they can have a wonderful celebration. Webo, it is indeed a pleasure for me to be back here once again, and I want to thank you so much for the invitation to be here, to listen to our people, and also to have good, frank, fruitful discussion here that I believe that can go towards helping to elevate our society. It's good to be here once again tonight, Webo.
Edric W. Stanley, good evening.
Good evening, Webo. Good evening to my fellow panelists. Good evening to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, especially people of St. Kitts, especially the people of Nevis. Those who will be listening to us on the World Wide Web and throughout the Caribbean Basin. Of course, we know that this show impacts quite a number of people, not only here in St. Kitts and Nevis, but also regionally and internationally. And we have to keep it at that high standard, disseminating truthful information, so that we could be followed always and be guided by what we say. Hence, I admonish my colleagues to get it right. Let's all of us get it right. And once we get it right, this show will go on long after we are gone. That's the effort that we must all put out. Good evening, Webo. I have a few things to put on the table. Some might be a little controversial, but at the same time, I will defend it.
As usual.
So, in this regard, let me bring one of the first things. I understood some of the church buses that go around, maybe one or two, would pick up some of the bad boys who do not go to church. If this is the case, and of course this is based on information that is reaching my desk, that they would go into some of the areas, and some of the fellows who are destined not to go to church, they would in fact ask them to come along, and in that regard, even give them things, entertainment, drinks, and so forth while they're in church. So that's a plus if they do go into the ways, highways and byways, and bring many of them back to the fold. We know, of course, those of us who have been brought up in the church, the great impact it had on us up unto this very day. It is those guiding principles that make us whom we are. And I will tell you, those who believe in those guiding principles, church teachings, biblical teachings, would always be a better person. The Vienna Choir Boys, I know we had a church choir boys here in Nevis. I do not know exactly if it is still existing, but I would urge those who, in fact, piloted such a program to go hard on it, to keep it going, and to bring into the fold those young men and young women. Webo, I will leave it there because you're back.
You're back? You went to it?
Never a dull moment with Edric W. Stanley. Okay, now I got two things to do before we get into the full discussion. First off, Naya, let me just say a very special welcome to you. And I don't know if you got it, but last week we did convey our empathy with you, because we had learned that one of the persons who had gotten into the shot in the incident involved your son. So how is he doing?
Webo, he's still with us. He's still at the Alexander Hospital, and we're working on actually trying to fly him out. I think we are trying to get him to Canada, because I think the spaces in Trinidad and Barbados and Jamaica is filled. He's critical, Webo, and he's been there 15 days, and of course he's filled with antibiotics, but treatment-wise, nothing much has been done because the hospital doesn't have the necessary facilities and equipment to deal with that. So basically, everyone is just folding their arms and waiting until we raise that amount of money, which is 36,000 US dollars, to fly him to Montreal. He's actually Canadian, so we are working on that. That is basically an update on my son. And I also want to thank those who have called me and have given me their support during this really tough times. He got shot on the first day of 2019. And as you know, I wasn't on the island. I just got here. And really it reflects our unpreparedness for these kind of circumstance, really. Even though these circumstances are so much, it keeps happening, so it's nothing new. We are working at it, and I thank for all the prayers that's been coming in, all the support that's been coming in, and I'm optimistic that we'll get there, and he will recover. He will recover. So once again, I say thanks to everyone. Thanks to my colleague around the table. Yes, I was in Montreal listening to this program, and I received those warm words of strength and support, and I did appreciate that a lot to Rebel. So thanks again to everyone.
Okay, an indication how important it is to each to lean on somebody else. I had occasion recently to commend women in the way they operate daily in society. And I just wanted to make the point here, how they seem to be more, they bind together, you know, like ants and locusts and those feeble folk that they said that they bind together because they understand that that's where strength comes, in numbers. And so I had occasion to say to a small group of men, boys, why don't we operate that way? Because I said, for instance, you don't notice that whenever women are hurting, or anything of that nature, how they support one another. If they have a difficult issue to deal with, maybe go to the doctor, they follow one another. And then in a light moment sort of way, I said, you ever go to a function, a party or something, and they're going to the bathroom? Come, follow me. Right? But it's a good, it's a good strategy with that sort of support. But somehow, I don't know, we don't seem to operate that way.
The guys,
yeah.
I mean, what you're saying is interesting because, I have guys around me a bit, but to be quite honest with you, almost all of the support was coming from the females calling me and trying to support me, really. And to be quite honest with you, I'm gonna say this because the very close brethren I have, really none of them have really called and said, well, now we hear about this and we hear about that. They obviously take it for granted, I suppose, that I am who I am with such strength that I probably don't need their support. But yeah, we men are like that. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. And in fact, Rebel, I live close to or work close to a young guy and an entrepreneur, and it's amazing the way they come by on Sundays and weekends and aid in the building and the construction of the facility, and at the same time have fun. And I think we used to do that here in Nevis once upon a time. And I'm talking about the Indians. And they're very nice people. I find they're very hard-working, nice people. And we used to do that here. But I think that's in the past now, and we just basically go to the bank and bill our house, and then we kind of peep over wondering if he or she is paying the mortgage or can afford to pay the mortgage. But a long time ago, it was that kind of support, this kind of village thing where we come together and we will cook on the weekend and we'll work as well. And a lot will happen. People would progress. People wouldn't have to rely on too much institution. And one hand help the other. We are here this week and this house is finished. Next week we move to another friend's house. I like that kind of communal spirit. But I think this capitalist thing have, really sink very deep within us, and, it leads to a lot of skepticism and wondering how is she or he doing. As Bob Marley said, when somebody asks you how you're doing, is because they just want to know that you're not doing better than them. That's the kind of thing I feel around here sometimes, and it's sad. How much we can just lighten up where I find our island is quite a difficult place to live in, and such a beautiful place.
I survive partially on quotations, philosophical sayings, and so on and so forth. And when I go to the internet and social media, maybe I go to it and look for things different to maybe most people. So I bounced up on this. When people hurt you over and over, think of them as sandpaper. They scratch and hurt you, but later you'll be shining and polished, while they will end up useless.
All right,
and I find that was kind of neat. When people hurt you over and over, think of them as like sandpaper. But later, they rub you and hurt you.
And they become useless.
Yes, but later, you become shiny and polished, and they become useless. How about that? Okay, so the other thing I wanted to say, and as I was speaking about how we can take away from the strategies that women use in the social movement. So you all are not going to believe this one. This can be a light moment. So I went to this workplace, and every now and then, at the beginning of the year, I like to ask for a diary. And they're getting scarcer and scarcer each time. I don't know if it's just the folks don't want to give me. So I went to this place and I asked, well, can I get a diary? They gave me one. Yeah, lovely ladies, maybe about 5 or 6 of them work in that place. And they gave me a diary on one condition, that I take one for Edric. So Melissa, come here please and give this to Edric for me, because I told them I would, give him on the ear so that they know that I did. Dan, what do you think about that? It look like I can't exist without him.
No, yeah. Well, I guess that he's true to his name. I guess that everybody recognizes that he's simply the best. He's one in a million. So you can't come and ask for one diary and forget.
Please go and hand that to Mr. Stanley for me, please. So they will hear and see that I didn't take the two for myself. As a matter of fact, if I didn't do that, I couldn't get one.
Thank you very much, Webo. And also, I must add that it didn't come just like this,
Oh, yeah.
We must make an effort to do our best at whatever we're doing. And ultimately, it will come to the fore. All the perks will just come in. Ultimately, the biggest would come from the Lord. Let me repeat that. Ultimately, the biggest would come from the Lord. And those who have not yet felt the trueness of the Spirit of God's working, continue to pray, and not only once per day, but many times per day. Well, thank you very much, and thank the lady or ladies who participated.
Ladies was a lot of them.
Yes, who participated in your getting this to me. And I will sure use it.
Yes.
Thanks again, ladies.
Okay. Now, I want to probably, I know that Edric and one or two others had indicated that I have a couple of things I would like to touch on. But I'd like to just discuss a little and, perhaps ask Dr. Bartlett perhaps to elaborate on it, if she will, because it is not the first time she has made a comment. Others have made a comment, and Onaya has made it a number of times as well. And indeed, when Edric and Ted and I started out, we felt the same thing. Now, I want to amplify on it a little bit more, because I think it is important in our development, as part of our development as a society. And I'm speaking, Dr. Bartlett, of the comment that you made when you encourage people to get involved and, whether call in or participate or make an effort to, as you did, and Naya, and so on and so forth. Because it's been quite a while, and maybe we're getting there slowly, but it's important to encourage people, right? And if you think about it in the sense of the quotation that I just read, when you come out and you give a view or anything like that, people will curse you. They will say all manner of evil against you falsely sometimes. But at the end of the day, right, it probably will worth it. And sometimes, to tell the truth, I have a motto I just say sometimes, well, they probably wouldn't study with me, but I'm going to say it anyway. So, Dr. Bartlett.
Yes, Bebo. Yeah, it was an observation that, and like you said, I've said it, this is not the second time, I've said it at least 4 times here, I've encouraged people to get involved in the process. It cannot just be about myself, Edric Stanley, Mr. Hobson, Bran and Naya, because we have a narrow view, but the views out there are so varied. And I think that the people in authority in particular who can make a change, they need to be hearing from other people, not just me, because Weber, I think you already made the observation as well, that sometimes we come here and we may express a view, and we're not the only ones holding that view, but when the repercussion comes, we're the ones who get it.
Yes.
No, I've said I'm quite prepared to pay it because I know that our time here is limited. It's 3 scores and 10. Some people don't even make it to a score. And so the material things don't bother me that much now. So when people, and I'm not trying to suggest that everybody should have my view of life, There are some people who obviously, the material things matter, and so they don't want to jeopardize that in any way. But I want people to get involved in the process. We can't just, and most of the times the issues related to politics in particular, because it's the policies, that we need sometimes to have discussions on. It's not enough that just 5 people get in a room and decide for 12,000 people. That may make no sense, And I keep telling people, don't tell me what your view is, because sometimes I may have an exchange with them, and then you hear that I would have said something that I know that I didn't say. Or, because people around here sometimes they want to paraphrase what you said. I'm like, no, don't do that. Let me tell you what I said, leave it right there, You take it for what it's worth to you. And so I encourage people to come on the air and discuss ideas. Politicians sometimes, and they need to get a little more, and Mr. Brand, I know sometimes I say something and my friend Brand would squirm, but I would still hug him next day, because it's not anything personal, It's about the policies. And that is the reason why I ask people to please call in. Let Mr. Brand, Mr. Brantley, everybody, let them know what you feel about issues. You ought not to be afraid of your representative. If you're in a country and you're afraid of your representative, you should go someplace like Uganda or some other place like that. Nevis is not the place. But the way, the democracy that we are practicing here, we can only mature when we have an input, from the people. So don't leave it up to me to make the sacrifice. I'm not Jesus, I can't pay the price for everybody. Then that is not fair either, and then at the end of it, everybody rejoice, So, like I said, I'm quite prepared to pay the price, but, everybody ought to have a stake in this thing. And so please, when the lines are open, call in and hear your views, because sometimes the next day, I'm busy shopping. I don't have any time with that. The time for that discussion is past. It's like, and people want to stop you and engage you. I have a life to live beyond just, the Tuesday night thing. I know that the Tuesday night means a lot to a lot of people. And I encourage people to listen. But get involved, call in, let people know what you're thinking, I don't like people to paraphrase me, and I encourage people, if you didn't hear what I said on Tuesday night, please listen the next day to hear what I said. I remember I made a statement concerning an incident in the Pony area, and then I was told that I said that something about an antenna and something, and I'm like, I didn't even use the word antenna. And so people, sometimes you need to hear it for yourself, and like I said, encourage you, if you don't hear it in the night, come out, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10 o'clock in the morning, you can hear it again for yourself. I remember, if I may share this experience, and this is just related to how people hear things and how they recount things, and how people interpret things. Don't leave it up to somebody else to interpret something for you. There was a sign, put up in this area, and I'd seen the sign for the first time, and there was a guy standing right next to the sign. And I stopped and I said, "What's on the sign there?" He said, "Oh, a woman got a restaurant over there." But it really was a restaurant sign, but he saw, the knife and the fork or whatever it is. But he still couldn't tell me the name, of the restaurant that was over there. And it wasn't anything difficult. I said that to say that sometimes people just, shortcut things and say some things that you don't hear, you haven't said. So the long and the short is that encourage everybody, call in, hear your views. Some people are going to like it. And the thing is, what I like about the calling part of it is that there's anonymity related to that, associated with that. You stay home and you may sound like somebody else. And people sometimes have a way of asking, well, who that voice is? It's not relevant whose voice it is. Listen to the views, And so I encourage you, people could say it's you, but you can always deny it if you don't want to be associated with it afterwards, because people don't know who is calling. So you're on the other end. When you turn on your TV or your laptop, you're going to see my face. I can't deny what I would have said, and I have no problem with that. I say who I am. From time to time, there's some voices that sound familiar, but don't worry about that. You're still anonymous. We don't know who you are, even though you sound like, whoever. So use that, close yourself in that, and please call in and make your presence known, make your views, known to the people it matters most to, Because sometimes it's like, oh, she's saying that again, It's not just my issue. Like I said, sometimes people tell me about these issues, but I encourage you to support me. I need the support, especially as it relates to women's issues. I need the support, ladies.
Naya, you...
Well, interesting, yeah, because I relive Tuesday night almost every day. I mean, I don't turn down the conversations that people want to talk. But what I do is I give them a time to, they always do most of the talking. And there's so many people out there, Weber, who listen to this program and who wants to call and afraid to call. Because the first thing they're going to say, they're going to know my voice. Why? And I'm asking why. Why are you afraid to call? And even if they know your voice, I think we got to break that, we got to crack that shell, whereby people are afraid of expressing their views because of the consequence. The consequence is what they might have to deal with as it relates to their occupation. Really, the pressure will come from, the central authorities because they are the one who have the so-called power at the time. But people are very, very much afraid to speak out. And I think that is a fundamental problem we are having, Webo. I believe the politicians will be more sharpened to people's views. They'll be more responsive. They will be more awakened to the fact that people are conscious of what is going on. Sometimes I wonder if they're really conscious of what the people are thinking and saying on the street, because they don't call into these programs, and when you talk to them, you know, I hear people say they're trying to contact this politician for years and all kind of thing, you know, and you know, but
for how long?
For years.
For years. I wasn't gonna call no name, but yes, man say certain people became, you know, certain things you can't get them. But very, 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 you know, serious issue this is, Webo, because I think this underpins this whole democratic thing, you know. I mean, there is people power out there, and they need to know that, and they need to realize that, yes, they can make a difference. Because as far as I check, you know, in a lot of circumstances, in a lot of situations that exist here in Nevis, is the politician to blame. But they will always say, when it is something not going good, we all have to find a solution. You know, it's we all. And when there's something going really good, they are quick to adapt that what can I say? You know, they are quick to say, okay, the government, you know, was, you know, make sure this and that is there in place for the people. You know, they always take the praise, but when it is going bad, you can't hear them really. You know, they're quite willing to say, well, we, you know, as, you know, even the criminal situation around here right now, not just the criminal situation, the general, you know, circumstance that seems to give us that kind of a bad name, bad reflection. You know, we are not happy about ourselves generally, Webo. I think I can say that. We are not happy with our society. We are not happy with what's going on. Nevisians to me are never political happy as it relates to St. Kitts, you know. So we have things to say. We have things to say. But it come like the power of the central authorities is as such that it suppresses the people to an extent that they cannot even say anything because their occupation and their everything is threatened. I think we got to make a change. We, the people, and the politicians have to realize that they need to encourage this too. But I suppose if they think about encouraging it, they were thinking about shortening their lives as politicians too. So it's a complex situation, really. But I am asking now, Nevisians, really and truly, look at ourselves, look at where we are, look at how we have to live when little things happen to us. You know, look at the relativity between ourselves and St. Kitts and the other islands. Look at ourselves serious because, you know, the politician must feel what we are feeling when election comes around. I'm not saying to vote for this party or the other, but don't just be an instrument in this. Be conscious of what is going on and make a decision based on your consciousness and your evaluation of the real situation. Because I think, Webo, we need to really look at our little island of Nevis in a very critical and a very serious way. Yes, Webo. And I think, you know, with this kind of feedback from the public, getting involved in the debates, I think it would help. It would help.
Now, first off, I know you concentrate heavily your comment on the political aspect, but it's across the society, right? Regardless to whether it is politics or not. Our people don't.
Well, I'm vexed with the 20%, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm upset with the 20%, man, because I realize what they have made of this society.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those who've been at the helm for 30 years.
I put
you know, those who have been in such positions sometimes across the region, sometimes, you know, but they're quick to say it's not them. You know, it's all of us. I don't buy that completely. I think, yes, the people share a response, but the uppermost, the 90% of it is that 20% that have lead the people down a path. You understand? That have built this society. I mean, any one of us around is happy with this society? No. Well, who's been at the helm of it all the time?
You mentioned that people perhaps don't get involved because they're afraid possibly of the consequence.
Yeah.
Might I ask, though, you think it perhaps can be is not so much the consequence, but you think that it is strategic of them?
No, I don't see no strategy in that personally. I don't at all. I see a lot of selfishness coming out of that sometimes because intelligent people know what's going on.
But that's what I meant. It's strategic. They understand what they're doing because even the very Bible, the precepts and the basis on which most of us operate, tells you that there is a consequence for everything. Even when you are going to try to get, I was making the point, salvation is free, right? But there's a condition.
Yes.
So whether it be politics or whatever, there is a consequence. So you just can't expect to get through life without a possible consequence in whatever action you take.
Or sacrifice, yes.
So that's why I just wanted to point out that it is not just purely consequence in politics.
Oh, no.
It's perhaps developing a different outlook on life. As per dealing with persons who approach me, as Dr. Bartlett has just said what she did, you said what you do. Well, I can give you what I have done from early, and it has worked. When people want to engage me a lot, when I'm off here, I said, check me 8 o'clock Tuesday. So, but it has worked tremendously for me because if they want to hear my views on a particular thing, check me. So that when they go and try to spin what I say, I could go back for the tape. And I've had over the years a couple of occasions. One person actually ended up on the program with us for a few years. And I could go back and find the tape where that person called in and accused me of saying something. I said, but I didn't say that. And he said, yes. I said, okay, you want me to stop this program and replay the tape? He said, no, go ahead. Continue. So I just made that in response to what Dr. Bartlett said, that sometimes people will take things out of context. Ted, let me go to you and speak to the same issue, and in terms of your society, because you've had obviously much more experience than us. You have experience in the courtroom and all, where sometimes people don't even come to witness and stuff like that. So what has been your experience in that regard, and what will be your encouragement?
Well, I consider this subject a very timely and important one, because I have always felt that we are very fortunate in these islands to have a very high rate of literacy. We both hear about we have 90% rate of literacy and 98, yeah. And people have views, and people are educated, and you only have to walk in the streets, and they're talking all the time, and they're expressing themselves. But unfortunately, they are afraid to voice their opinion, so that the people who should really hear them are not hearing them. The other day, I had occasion to speak with Dr. Patrick Martin. I think many of you would know he was the former chief medical officer. And of late, he has been on radio and expressing himself on many issues. And he visited our church a couple of Sundays ago, and we spent quite a while outside after church and talking. And I was saying to him how much I appreciate hearing him on the radio and expressing his views on a number of subjects. And I said to him, you know, Doc, I don't always agree with you, but I really salute you and for expressing yourself and so forth. But we end up saying he has earned the right to express himself. And I said the same thing, I've earned the right to express myself. But I think everybody has an inherent right to express themselves, whether they are in a position of security, because this, I think, I could talk because nobody can do me anything. I think nobody can do me anything insofar of me expressing myself. And so it is with Dr. Martin, and so is it with Dr. Bartlett and so forth, and Mr. Stanley and Naya and so forth. We can express ourselves because we are sufficiently secure.
No.
I figured you'll get a challenge.
There are people, well, there are people who are afraid for some reason or other. They are afraid. They're not afraid, but if you look on Facebook, they're not afraid to express themselves, sometimes in the most vulgar fashion.
But hence, Ted, that is why I asked Naya the question earlier, whether or not it is strategic. In other words, they can, but they don't. And then when it is necessary or convenient for them, they do it.
Yeah.
So it can well be strategic.
Well, I don't know whether, but they could express themselves in on all kind of subjects. Every subject on earth, they'll be expressing themselves, even how Trump behaves and so forth. You see it on Facebook and so forth. But those people will never ring up. When I listen to talk shows and syndicates and so forth, the same people over and over and over again are expressing themselves. And people are listening, but they themselves would not dare, for some reason or the other, to express themselves. And I think we need to get over that. We need to understand that one of the inherent rights of a human being is to be able to say what he feels he ought to say. And until we reach that stage where the power to express himself is unleashed, and so we are not going to be any better, because everybody has a view. My pupil, my first principal, a man who started the Charleston Secondary School, Gaston Orville Fox, used to say there are as much opinion as there are men or women. And so everybody has a view of certain, and let them express themselves. We'll be better off for it. But until that key that opens up that well of resources that each of us have, we are going to be limited. And so I think it's a very good subject to raise. And I hope that people are listening, especially those people who will meet me on the street and say, well, I didn't say this, or I this and this and that, would be able now to ring in and say, well, Mr. Hobson, I disagree with you on that, or I agree with you on that. It's fair. I expect, and I respect people's view, and I expect people to criticize me sometimes about what I say. I don't want people to criticize me personally, but I'd like them to criticize what I have said and whether you agree or you don't agree. You know, until we reach that stage where we are going to be very, very, very limited in how far we could reach.
One of the other things that I've found interesting over the years, and an illustration of it happened a few weeks ago, but it has been happening, you know, over the period of time that we've been doing this exercise. Because I always tell people that my guests, whether it be the heavyweights or whoever else, are not here put on show to be abused. As Mr. Hobson just indicated, you can curse if you will, using that strong word. You can curse the ideas. You can, you know, attack the ideas and so on, but I'm not going to allow any of my guests to be abused. So anyway, an example I'm speaking about a few weeks ago in terms of not abuse, but in terms of demands, where a gentleman kept demanding of the heavyweights that they answer or address these particular issues. And I said to him, well, did you take the opportunity to ask any of the elected representatives? He suggested to me that he couldn't get them. So I politely suggested, okay, Mr. Brantley, who I have categorized of no afraid nobody, is going to be here tomorrow night. So I'm suggesting that you call him, and he will be willing to address the matter. And I keep asking Mr. Lee, who works on the board tonight, the fellow call, and you know, and so on and so forth. Now, I just pointed that out to make the point that not only people want to be encouraged to you know, give their views on certain things or question, but also to understand, as I pointed out, if your electricity or your water is off, if you call the radio station, they might be able to help, might be. But you stand a much better chance if you call the water department. You have one call, let's say. So, if your water is off, you have a decision to make, one call, you call the water department, you likely will get better result. So, you have some issues with certain things. We're here, we're trying, you know, to help. But a lot of these issues, ask Mr. Brand, because that's why he is there. And I got a new campaign coming up for the new season, you know. So, in case I don't study you. Anyway, Edric.
Well, this issue that is on the table, the topic, it's universal. Meaning that everybody has his way of stating his views, his or her views, and they have a reason as to why, when, where, and if they should state them at all. And even today, the man who is tapped, Mr. Barr, for the Attorney General for President Donald Trump, said that if he were 45, 40, or 45, or 50, he would have probably taken a different position. But because he has accomplished what he has accomplished, has worked for large corporations, and he's probably got a decent bank account, he said nobody's going to influence his decision. And he is going to be a straight shooter, and he would not be influenced by Donald Trump, nor any editorial board. The same thing in our society. We who are around the table, we state our positions, and regardless to who huffs or puffs out there, we know that we are stating it from a position of strength and not weakness. And there are a lot of people who will never call on this program simply because they're not in the position to state their personal views. And
but it also could be strategic.
It is strategic.
Because is it possible?
It is tactical and strategic.
Because sometimes that person might be in a stronger position than me or you. Well, here's someone who I don't want to get upset because I think they want to express their views.
Please take the call.
So let's do it. Let's do it. Can't get it to work out. Hello, good evening.
Hey,
okay.
Good evening, Baba.
Yes.
But I want to show you up and ask you a question, please. Watch here. If you're from Guyana and you live in Nevis, you have the same right as we are here. Even if you're a citizen, something like that. You have, how come you can get the same right? Same right like us. We born here. You can't, a Guyanese woman tell me that she got the right just like us here. That she got a Nevis passport. Why? How?
And you don't think that she should?
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
Because what's that? The born here. So I mean, she got the same right like us. I don't believe that, man.
Sometimes. Okay. All right, I got you. Okay, thank you. Now, he doesn't believe Edric, right? So,
But once she has a passport, a legitimate Nevis St. Kitts passport, then she can be categorized as a citizen. And
He can't be categorized, he's a citizen.
well, I'm just saying, and thus, that passport and citizenship give her all the rights of a person who is an indigenous Nevisian.
But what is interesting?
But he feels, for some reason,
Yes.
because he was born here, he should have an extra right or more rights.
But maybe he does.
Well, he feels that way, but that's
But that's what I'm
under the
saying.
Constitution. That's not the case.
Okay, but here would be this. I think would be interesting though. To find out from him why he thinks that the person should have not the rights. He's not seemingly too concerned that he has them. Because the point is, obviously he has them.
That's right.
Right? But his passion seems to be that she shouldn't have them.
Right, that's quite true.
So the question I would have is, so in other words, the fact that she has them, does it diminish yours?
No, but he feels for some reason that she should not have the same right as he has because he was born here. And that is the mistake a lot of people made, not only here in Nevis.
But then
in the Virgin Islands.
If you want,
famous quote.
But I can take you on technically. I can argue that he actually does have more. Because
Defend it,
I'm defending it because he says that she has a passport and she was given the same rights, right? Except she could not have gotten the right that she was born here. How did I do, Ted?
We understand that, and of course you have made a very forceful point with reference to an indigenous.
So he has one up on her.
But let him
let
him carry it to the bank.
For what it's worth. For what it's worth.
For what it's worth.
But the reality is it's not worth much more.
Let him carry it to the bank.
But he
I mean, we come from different angles. Pat came from the worth, and I say, let him take it to the bank. It doesn't worth anything else. More than I would say to this fellow.
Okay.
You were born here, and because you were born here, you should utilize that as a factor, because more people knew you than they knew this person.
But how you just said that you didn't want anything, so you're contradicting yourself.
Well, I'm just trying to know, pacify the fellow.
No. Walk with me. Walk with me. You're negating your own argument.
Yeah.
That was not the issue, Webo. I'm trying to tell the fellow, because he now wants to vilify this person simply because this person must say, in your face, I got a passport, I got just as much right as you have. And I'm just trying to tell him, okay, see if you can up the ante. But he can't take that right.
Okay,
to the bank.
just hold a second. Hello, good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello, good evening, Weber. Good evening to the panel.
Good evening.
Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Same to you.
Weber, maybe you should go a bit further and explain to the gentleman that the is also true. If he goes to Guyana and he gets a Guyanese passport, he would have as much rights as a Guyanese. So maybe that way he will be able to see where it's correct. As according to the Constitution.
Yeah, maybe he might feel that he's even then.
There you go.
All right. Okay.
Then he wouldn't have such a problem with it.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, Edric, go ahead.
So the topic at hand is that it is not unique to Nevis. We are human beings and we have our own feelings, and in that regard we would express them. But people are people, and no matter where you go across the globe, people need to be secure, and they have to do what they have to do to become secure within their own locality. You know, you have to produce, save, accumulate, and ultimately concretize yourself in that society. That when you decide to mouth off or boast off or tell anybody off, when they push, they don't push you over.
Ridiculous.
So
You shouldn't have.
I am saying to you, all to those who are listening, that nothing has changed anywhere. You have to put yourself in a position
Bad advice.
that when you are who you are, and you have to work toward it. You have to work toward it. Those people who can't tell their politicians what they want to tell them is because they have not made the contribution, the production, the sacrifice, whatever it is. As a result, they will be sidelined, and we know it.
I could take you on with that, but let's go to Mr. Brand first.
People have been redlined and sidelined
Let's go to Mr.
because
Brand.
they're not strong.
Let's go to Mr. Brand, and you know, later on we got time. I'll show you. Yes, Mr. Brand.
Well, as regards to a person voicing their opinion, what I found, well, sadly, is that oftentimes we realize that the messenger are often sought out to be destroyed or tarnished, and I think that oftentimes the message that is being delivered is not necessarily being captured. And I think that because of that, we have missed, I believe, a lot of opportunities. Naya spoke about some of the society ills. Dr. Bartlett, all of us would have mentioned over time that there are certain societal ills that is confronting our society. Oftentimes, Webo, I believe that there are persons who come to the fore with meaningful suggestions, practical solutions to certain issues. And let's be blunt. People who say who he think he be or who she think he be. And let's face it. Let's not try and sugarcoat it. Right? I have been in that situation as a young boy coming up. Why you're a little boy, you go sit down, you don't know what you're talking about. And I believe we have missed some opportunities. I remember, Webo, I was at a particular service right here in Nevis, and the pastor said certain things, and persons going through the door, and I couldn't believe some of the kind of statements I heard going through the church because of what the pastor said. And the pastor was speaking about some of the same society ills that we are facing, and who he think he be, and those kind of things, and so on and so forth. People are hesitant. People are reluctant to give advice that they believe that can help in alleviating some of our challenges.
Why?
Because sometimes
Backlash.
there are this backlash, there are this tendency to tarnish or destroy the individual. I remember, Webo, over the years, we know that Nevis was without a radio station. Van Radio came on the scene and people began to, I believe that, I would even dare to say that because of Van Radio, that a lot more information would have been disseminated from right around this table here. I know that a lot of persons would have gotten backlash because of some of the comments and so on that they would have said around this table here. But I think Mr. Stanley would have said it right. You have to be strong and bold and courageous with what you have to say, and once you are right, I think he started by saying, get it right. Well, I remember I missed the program here.
Mr. Brand,
Yeah.
just pause. Let me take this person since we're encouraging them to input. Hello, good evening.
Hey, okay. The same lady was telling me she have the same right like us, right? She told me she 100% Guyanese. So what, that means she 100% Nigerian?
No. Caller, work with me. No, that's where you have one up on her. So she's not equal to you, because if she's 100% Guyanese, then you just tell her you're 100% Nigerian, so you have one up on her. Okay?
She got the same right like a media.
No, but what I'm saying is, she may have the same rights, let's say that.
Constitutionally.
Right, but she is 100, but she cannot claim she's 100% Nigerian. You agree with that?
Definitely.
And you can.
Me too, definitely.
All right, so you have one up on her. You agree with that?
That's she got.
Right, so you just let her know that, okay?
All right.
Okay,
Yes,
so
thank you.
there you go.
All right.
Enjoy your evening.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Brand, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was saying that I remember when I started to be one of the panel here, I think I missed a session, one of the Tuesday evening, and our good friend, the late Albert Myers, sat me down and gave me a schooling.
God bless his soul.
He let me to know that this is serious business. This is an obligation. You have an obligation and a duty. Once you're here, you have to show up. You have to partake. And I think, Webber, I think that was the time when it really sank in as to how important getting the information out and the right information. I don't believe that our people should be fearful of voicing their opinion. I think that once what they are saying is truthful and accurate and they can defend it, not a soul could do them.
Well, let me ask you this. Following up on the last statement that you just made, could that therein lie the problem? You didn't get it.
No.
You said providing what you're going to say is accurate,
well,
etc., etc.,
yes.
etc. I'm asking, could therein lie the problem?
Well, it could be a problem if the person voicing their opinion and not telling the truth. So if there is that hesitation to say what's on their mind is not truthful, maybe that's
so that could be part of the problem.
That could be
right?
part of the problem.
Okay,
absolutely.
because I think I mentioned it earlier, and I like to point out because everybody knows, almost everybody, because we're a Christian society, and know in some fashion the passage of Scripture would say, they will say all manner of evil against you. But most of the times they never continue. Because the next thing that comes after that is falsely.
Yep.
So I argue that what the Scripture is saying, that it is not, people can say all manner of evil against you. Fairly. Okay? But what the Scripture was speaking was about when it is false.
Yeah.
Very important distinction. So that's why I said, Mr. Brand, what you said there is important because sometimes people know
it is false.
The truth.
Yeah, what they're saying is not accurate. And hence might be the reason why they don't say it in certain places.
True, because they know the consequences.
Yes, they know they will be challenged.
Yeah.
And a quick example is you'll often hear rivaling politicians encourage or admonish or dare
to say it out
outside.
They've been challenged.
And they don't.
Well, as a matter of fact, right now I think there's a challenge in Antigua where the Prime Minister would have said something about another colleague in Parliament, but so he's now taking him to court. But he's taking him to court. No, because the issue was he would have said it when they were in recess. Oh. They were inside the Parliament, so he dared to say it because he thought he had, parliamentary immunity. But they were not in session at the time, so it is going to court.
It's a legal matter.
Well, that parliamentary immunity, I always wondered about it, whether or not somebody shouldn't challenge it.
Yeah.
And see, because in the days when that thing was put in place in the first instance, Parliament never used to be live on radio and television and in the public and all that and so on. So that it was in the halls of the building, basically. Right? So it will be interesting to challenge it and see what they say.
Yeah. Is it lawyer?
I think that might seem to be a gray area, but again, it has to be determined in a court of law as to whether or not it was a gray area.
But you see, to come back to the central point, though, is to whether or not part of the reason why we don't get involved in certain discussions, in certain forums, is the validity of what we actually would say. Because I will tell you that, in my travels, I've heard people say a lot of things, sound very persuasive. And as Edric would say, then no, it's not true. And sometimes that's the reason why, one of the reasons why they don't say it in certain places, or they want you to say it.
But Webo, can I just, and this is not personal, Stanley, but Stanley made a comment there, and I don't particularly, agree with it, and this is the reason why. Stanley would have made the assertion that people, as if people need to own or earn, rather, earn is the word, need to earn the right to speak. He's suggesting that you would have done your work, you would have accumulated this and that. People don't need to earn the right to speak. We all have, as Mr. Hobson would have said earlier, an inherent right to speak. Once you're speaking the truth, if you're going to say something that is not true, then you really don't have a right to say it. You have a right to say it, but you have to deal with the consequences. But once you have something to say, you ought to say it, irrespective of what you have in life. Mr. Brand said something, I don't think he really understood what he said. He said you should be able to say what you want and nobody could do you nothing. But the truth of the matter is that until politicians around here get to the level of maturity that they understand that a view doesn't necessarily mean you have anything personal against them. It may be a policy that is going to impact all of us. And so all of us have a right to speak about it. So if I have an issue with the housing situation and I make clear how I feel about it, you don't need to vilify me or try to, for some reason, try to stop me from getting what I might be due. I mean, that is not fair. But I don't think that I've earned the right. I don't have anything more than Mr. Naya here. I mean, well, maybe that is not a good comparison because he's trying to suggest that everybody on the table is at a certain level, that they're financially stable and all that. I mean, we're all vulnerable here. You heard Naya speak earlier about, having to fly his son out for $36,000 US. I mean, maybe he has it right, But I'm just saying we're all vulnerable and most of us just a paycheck from being, uncomfortable, from being uncomfortable. So I'm trying to suggest to the politician, let me be, don't take it personally. If I say something about a policy that you institute, man, just take another look at it now. After all, I'm a citizen and I have that right. Don't try to vilify me. And by the same token, I want everybody out there in the community to feel comfortable that way. You have something to say. Don't tell me to say it when I go on the radio. You should be able to call in and say it. And you shouldn't be afraid of your politicians. And politicians need to come here and give us the assurance that going forward, as a democratic society, people should feel comfortable. And don't just say the words. You ought to be able to demonstrate that. Make people feel comfortable. Because this is where we all live and we all have a right to live here. And likewise, we all have a say in our community.
Okay, let me get a break. But as I go, Dr. Bartlett, consider this quotation. The price of freedom is not free.
Well, I don't want us to lose.
VON vibrates, the whole Caribbean must shake.
860 AM, the powerhouse.
Just arriving at Builders Paradise. Brand new mirror bypass doors. Sizes include 4 feet, 5 feet, and 6 feet. Oh, and don't forget to check out their Saturday yard sale for even better discounts. Builders Paradise, where your island dreams begin.
Sugar City St. Kitts. Keep it sweet. Keep listening to Vaughn.
Back on this episode of Thought That Get Results with Dr. Patricia Bartlett, Conrad Nye Liburn, Ted Hobson, the Honorable Spencer Brand, and Edric W. Stanley.
Well, Pat mentioned that I attempted to say that you don't have the right to say what you want to say unless you are at a certain level. Well, you have the right to your feelings, all the rights to your feelings. And in that regard, you say what you feel. I'm not telling people they can't say what they feel, but people within themselves know that there are consequences based on what comes from their mouth. And as a result, they would pull back or not say anything simply because of the backlash or the consequences. No, in order for you to say what you want, when you want, how you want, if you want, you have to work toward positioning yourself.
No, that's bad advice.
How could it be bad advice when you want to say certain things and you can't say so simply because you are afraid of the ramification? How could that be bad advice?
It is bad advice to suggest.
Well, you, in your opinion, you think it is bad advice. I'm telling people, begin to position yourself. And it starts from the cradle. And once you begin to position yourself, you would arrive at that juncture where you are able to say what you want, again, where you want, when you want, if you want, and therefore you apologize to no man.
But you
when
would
you're
agree,
speaking the truth.
But you would agree, Mr. Stanley, it does not go only to speech and politicians. For instance, in life, you might decide, well, I'd like to get a house. I'm 20, 25 years old, or I'd like to buy a car. So there are several options. You can go to the bank, and you can borrow some monies. But you might tell yourself, borrow $80,000, that's a lot of money. Suppose me no thing, suppose me lose my job, suppose this and so on and so forth. So it seems as if now you got this fear.
It's a natural thing, it's natural.
So that's the point that I'm making. So it does not come necessarily with only that. And I go back to the main point that whatever it is in life, it has consequences. And the very book that as a Christian society we hinge our hopes, aspirations and on, also it has consequences. Whatever you do have consequences. That's the essence of life.
It's just a natural occurrence.
Yes.
And one of the great presidents of the United States said, the greatest thing to fear is fear itself.
So
once you have vanquished fear, you go forward.
So then for us to stay here expecting that we're going to get to a place where, or a point in time, whereby we express an opinion and Mr. Brand is not going to figure that he's not positive towards him. He's not going to
fix the bottle in front of your house, sorry.
Right. Like and so on and so forth. So people, to me it's an interesting thing to discuss and understand that it is not in any one particular area, because as you go deeper in it, you find that it comes down to who people are as well. Because you express an opinion, and then Edric likes to use the phrase sometimes, spite and bad mind. And that comes in.
And sometimes it's irrelevant. It's not applicable. But people are people.
Yes.
And they do apply those traits, bad mind, grudge, envy, and they come after you. But if you are well positioned, because people come after me all the time.
But you keep going back to this well-positioned thing. If all of us were to make the sacrifice then, if they cannot come at 12,000 people, so if all of us wanted to make the sacrifice, then collectively, don't you think that in some way would, suppress the desire for them to want to come after you?
Dr. Bartlett, might I ask Edric to define, since he keeps using it, define then what you mean when you say well-positioned?
Well-positioned meaning from the cradle, as I mentioned. From the time you enter school, begin to look at the target. Be focused. Learn.
But well-positioned must be a point in time, a status at one point.
You have to reach somewhere.
Yes. To be positioned, you must be at a particular juncture.
Every step of life, every step of life, you would have accomplished and you would progress and you would go upward and onward. And you put your marker.
You would have accomplished meaning material stuff?
Not only material stuff.
Oh,
wisdom,
that's
knowledge.
why it's important to...
Knowledge, wisdom, understanding.
No, but it's not because the people are the stupid why they ain't calling, you think?
I'm not saying that.
Right.
But there are reasons why they don't, because they meet me and you all, Honorable Spencer Brand Weber, and they want to have a conversation. Yes. And they want to get their thing on the table. And the table that they really want to get it on is this table, you know. But they don't want to really call in simply because Weber mentioned it. I told him, look, if you're in your bed, put the pillow over your mouth and get the phone and speak. I can identify many people in this society who would speak. That. But at the same time, people are afraid to be identified. And it's a natural
right,
fear.
in some instances, but I keep interjecting. Is it not possible that maybe there's a degree or number or similar number of people who they're not really afraid, but it is strategic?
Quite so.
And you have to understand the gravity of that when I keep saying it is strategic, because some people might have direct access to Mr. Brand, and they may talk to him in a body system kind of way, but they probably would not tell him what they want to tell him. And it mightn't even be politics.
It's tactical. It's strategic.
That is what I'm saying. So as we discuss, I want us to keep that in mind, so that we don't maybe in the end come to maybe false conclusions.
No, we would never. You'd see, and it's going.
Just give me a second. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes, Mr. Hobart. Good evening and Happy New Year to you.
And thank you, and the same happy return to you. And it's good to hear from you.
Yes, try to make it a little more often now. Yes, on the topic, if you look at what you're saying, I would just like to put one word between it: discrimination. We talk about the white and what they're doing to the black. Look at what the blacks is doing to the blacks right here in Nevis. If you speak out, you're discriminated again. But then who you go to? What I noticed in Nevis after 35 years of independence, we don't have no union. The people run to the politicians. They run to them and they vote. And when they get fired, they run back to them again. So you run from one side to the next side to a politician all the time. Never a union. Look at the forces of the workers. Who are represented them? The politicians. How could we live a life like that? The politician here never encourage the people to be independent. It's always run to me. And then we try to get the best and the brightest in government. And what they do to the people after they're there, run to me. I listen to and record your programs as often as I could. I go back to what Ms. Bartlett said about what they added on to the Culturama complex, the VIP. How much years I've been partaking in Culturama? I got a national award. I never had that at Culturama. Then all of a sudden somebody come into government and he decided better than. And then you listen to how Mr. Hobson would reference to that people reach a certain standard, so they're expected to be that way. Where do we get off like that in Nevis? We're simple people, hoping to get along in a simple way, employing simple people to lead, and then they live among us as if they are not like us. How could we accept things like that? Take, for instance, if someone say, vote for me, I'll bring some hotels. Vote for me, I'll bring geothermal. And then years after, nothing happened. The press never asks nothing about it. It's like honesty. You say something in honest, but does not do it. Does that statement then remain honest? It's just was said to get elected. When are we as people going to hold our leaders responsible for their words? One man would say, God put me in power. But then I always ask, does God put you in power to mistreat people? If we are God's children and God put you there to mistreat me, he must have made a mistake. But I know he can't make mistakes.
God doesn't.
Okay.
Then why are the leaders mistreating the people? Why, Mr. Stanley, can you explain why are they lying? Why politicians would say, for instance, you vote for me to make decisions for you, so I don't have to come back to tell you what I'm going to do? What's that? Is that the kind of democracy England gave us? This thing needs scrubbing and washing and bathing in the sea. Because this is not democracy. You can't tell me that you're there to govern, but you can't say nothing until 5 years. That's not the way I was taught. You go to school and the teacher tells you something and you know it's wrong. You're going to sit down there and learn it, and it's wrong. And then you go home and do it. And then you tell your mother, the teacher teach me so. I know it was wrong, but I learned it wrong. That is what is happening in Nevis with government. You talk about people's fear of speaking out. Nevis is hard. Work is hard to get. If you have a job, people trying to keep their job. So they will take the suffering. And then next thing you get is people going out home and abusing their family because they are being abused at the job and no one to complain to. Look at the insurance policy. These are things I'm trying to get the ministers them to discuss. Look at the way workers are treated on the job. Listen to their concerns. And don't, because you and the person who is in charge of friends will try to make it up with your friends and then ignore the plight of the workers. This here, one last thing, Mr. Herbert. This year is going to make 40 years I've been working in the Department of Public Works. 40 years. And I just want to say this. I'm not blind. I'm not stupid. I've been paying close attention to a lot of things, and I have a lot of information. And like I say, one day I might not be working for government, and I intend to run for politics in this country because I have a lot to say.
He said he's going to run.
Wait, you have a lot of information, you said, sir?
Yes, like I tell you, I have manifestos and things.
I got you. You got a lot of information.
Yeah.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes, sir. You could ask me this.
Where is that information? Is it on your desk?
Oh, well, it's more than this because, like I tell you, I have manifestos from long ago. I have booklets with
Yeah, but I was just.
Farmer Premier and
yeah, but I'm just trying. I'm just trying to find out where do you have that information if it's on your desk.
No, in my drawer.
In your drawer, okay.
Oh, let me ask you a question, Mr. Albert. Where's Cicely Tyson's family from?
Maybe Edric
Nevis.
But is there anything in Nevis, anything you could look around and say, representing her? Thank you very much, Mr. Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Well, this caller has really exemplified what we've been talking about. He has been, for the last 30 years I've been on this program, he has been ringing in, and he has been working for Public Works, and he has been critical, and he's still working for Public Works. I mean, that is amazing, really. So there's nothing wrong in speaking out. You know, there's nothing to fear.
But he has positioned himself to speak out, and even though he might have rubbed some people the wrong way, he's still there. And this is what I'm saying.
Well,
you have to position yourself.
How will he position himself?
But he's still there. However, he has also indicated that he has suffered as a consequence of that. Right? So, but again, keeping in mind, the reality of life is this, that you're not going to find any utopia anywhere. At once, no matter what it is, if you're going to go down the road and you're going to walk barefoot, for instance, be prepared that you're going to get cuts or bruises and so on and so forth. You just can't get up and start to curse the rocks and them and saying, you see there, I walking down here now, you cut up my foot. Right? That is life. There's certain, so you have to meet the challenges and fight it. Right? The great Martin Luther King, he didn't have nothing much. Right? He had a belief. And he went and he fought for it and died as a consequence.
Yeah.
Right?
I knew he was going to die for it.
But that is why we don't progress, you know, Rebel. Yeah, like
Why we don't progress?
Yeah, that is why we don't progress.
Or as much?
Well, maybe I should qualify by progress.
Please.
In terms of a democracy, we ought to be a little further ahead, I think. You know, we ought to have been a little further ahead. We should not still be sitting here and talking about people can't speak. You know, we're going to have some fundamental changes within our society. And we're calling on the people on the 80%. As I don't know where he came up with the 80, but anyway, I'll work with it. But we're going to have to get the 20% to be a little more receptive. I'm just using Naya's percentage. And understand that in a progressive democracy, you know, people ought to have certain rights respected. And one of those rights, obviously, is the right to speak. You know, freedom of speech, and I've heard people say, you know, freedom of speech, but, you know, speech not free, and, you know, but if you're not saying anything that is wrong, if you're just airing a concern, I think, you know, people should be encouraged to, you know, to air their concerns, and people should be encouraged to critique, you know, policies that are put forward. And the reason why I keep going on as if it were somehow just related to the politics of the day is because I've heard people cuss the pastor, you know, people not afraid to cuss out the pastor, but nobody gonna cuss the politician.
They do.
They do. At least not while he's there.
They get a lot of licks right here in this radio station. Because I'm always calling out the politicians.
No. There's a difference, though, and we need to be able to make the distinction between someone criticizing a policy and criticizing the politician, you know? I mean, because we all, and I respect the offices, I respect all the politicians. I mean, it's not easy, and somehow it comes with the job as well. And they ought to recognize that it comes with the job. If you're going to represent people, of course you're going to have some people who just for political reasons are going to criticize you. And then there are other people in this community who constructively want to help you to build. And you ought not to look at those persons as adversaries, you know. For instance, when I speak,
okay, Dr.
I will speak
Bartlett,
about policies.
let me just pause. I'll come back to you. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Yes. Okay. It's very interesting tonight. I'm trying to decide whether not to call in. But some of the questions that have come up through the years and recently, and especially tonight now, everyone should say their mind, is that we have to take another look as to why we are so fearful. And I think it goes back to slavery, that we were fearful from slavery days. And right now we're still fearful. We have been given a religion that's been brought to us by people from Europe who had an agenda to keep us under the thumb and fearful of everything that they had to do. And we haven't stopped to question why. We are living in a new age now where all the things that we're talking about come to people power. But we are reluctant to really exercise that power. We keep on turning to the politicians or the priests for our answers. Yet none of them have the answers. We keep on complaining, but the answers have been given us some time ago. At the time when the slaves were given their freedom, they had no other option but to follow Christianity. At the same time, in Persia, the Baha'i faith started. Baha'u'llah came and gave mankind the option to live in a new world. And that world consisted of the equality of men and women, the harmony of science and religion, I'm rushing now, and I'm getting, but let me just stop there. This first two ones right there. He had no, and what we're having now is that mankind is in need of a new heaven and a new earth. Everything that we see around us is indicating that we are now a global society, but we are still thinking in the terms of Nevis, America being one. We have to see ourselves as one people globally, and we have to recognize, as you were saying earlier, that each one of us has a right to express ourselves. But what Bahá'u'lláh has done, he's given us the opportunity to express ourselves in local spiritual assemblies, in community discussions. No other avenue has combined the spiritual and material and social and economic well-being of mankind into one package. We have to examine this carefully, because mankind has a purpose, and his purpose is what Isaiah said: swords to be beaten into plowshares. Jesus says to be one fold and one shepherd. In St. John it says to be a new heaven and a new earth. All these things are in our grasp right now, but because of what we were taught, that Adam was the first human being, and because he sinned, we are now dying, and Christ has to come out of the sky and resurrect everybody and make everything good again. And then everything we're going to live on the planet just nice and peaceful, eating breadfruit and whatever, just going to be dropping out of the trees. But all of those things are metaphorical, right? We are here to live together in peace and harmony. And right now, we have certainly we have the material means to unite the world in one piece. The only thing that is keeping us apart is our hearts. We've been brought up with some kind of prejudice and superstition, and we're hanging on to that as being the only answer. But God has given us an answer, that we are one people, we are one planet, and he said that we now must reach the point where we can trust each other to share our views and consult on what is best for Brown Hill or St. Thomas's. We have the capacity to do this.
Okay, caller.
Yeah.
I think I got a point. All right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Dr. Bartlett, go ahead.
Well, just to pick up one thing, though, that the caller would have said, just to follow on, I think he said that the fear came from slavery. But what I would challenge him on now, though, is that fear is not something that is hereditary. I don't know anything about slavery. I never grew up in those days, you know. So I don't think it is easy to just say that fear came from slavery. It's not something that you inherit, you know. It's not passed down from generation to generation. It has to do with your space and how you feel about yourself, you know. But anyway, I know him, so we'll pick up that, you know, on a personal level.
Slavery comes in different form, because slavery is still around.
Yes, slavery is still around. Yeah. But he just made reference to that. But anyway, I was trying to make the point that our politicians need to understand, you know, that when we talk about and when we critique, you know, and I strategically didn't say when we criticize, you know, because I know you say things that, you know, sometimes you have to be careful. But when we critique sometimes things that are brought to us that is purportedly something that is going to enhance our lives or whatever, you know, or make us a better society, you need to be able to take it, you know, and some people used to use this term, they say you need to man up, you know, and that is what I don't find, you know, enough, you know, and I think that is what sometimes fosters a fear in people, because they don't think that our politicians are, you know, like strong like Mr. Brand, and could take the critique, you know. I mean, Mr. Brand could take it, like I said, you know, he wins sometimes.
Are you presupposing that when a person critiques a politician, they're therefore correct, and that view of the critique should hold?
No.
And not suggesting that the politician who holds perhaps an opposing view should not let his view be known, and hence it becomes a debate. And if the politician is a stronger debater, then the person who started out with the critique may then suddenly
Loses.
feel, well.
Yes, because people have different perspective, you see, and the way you see it, and it is not about, and you made mention about women earlier, and the thing is, for us as women, it's not about winning or losing, you know, and sometimes when they say, well, you win, just to say, they would never say you're right.
But keep in mind,
it's not
Dr.
about
Bat,
right or wrong
yeah,
either.
keep in mind,
it's
I
about a
didn't
different perspective.
Keep in mind that when I was making my point did not include that
of course
statement,
not.
that right or wrong.
No, but you
said... somebody brought it in,
well,
and I didn't get to finish.
Okay.
Right? So I just wanted to say
the politician might very well be right, you know, but
No.
if I have a different view based on my perspective in life, then that ought to be tolerated. And maybe what we need to be preaching is tolerance on both sides.
That exactly my point. So what I'm saying here is this, that you may find that if you go and you challenge, let's say now Edric, and it is me. Now Edric obviously is a stronger debater than I. So I may think that I have a great point. And I might say, well, okay, Mr. Stanley, I think that Deepwater Port that you're going to be building is a waste of time, taxpayers' money.
Right.
Right. So that is my view.
Yes.
So Mr. Stanley now debates me and so on and so forth. And then he is probably more charismatic, maybe more articulate, and so on. And then I feel, well, you know, he is not letting me.
It shouldn't be Weber.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that he's right, Weber.
Huh?
That doesn't necessarily mean that he's correct.
No,
right.
No, it doesn't necessarily mean
Well,
that.
defend the territory.
However, sometimes people feel that if a person is more charismatic than them, more articulate and so on, the facts may be dead off target. But it is a matter of persuasion. Yeah. That's what it's all about.
But I
at
did
the end of
mention
the day.
the personal feeling.
No, at the end of the day, that's not what it's about. At the end of the day, it's about how we deal with it. It's the outcome, because
a lot
I
of
should be
things-
able to air my view,
Yes.
and it is opposing to yours, but at the end of the day, there's no recrimination associated with it.
That's the nature
And
of
that is
life,
what
Dr.
the
Bartlett.
conversation is all about.
Good
That is not-
versus
that ought
evil,
not- that ought not to
persuasion.
be
Because when
the
a person,
relationship that we have.
when a person has a viewpoint, right? Take for instance the freeing up or the locking up of marijuana. They are going to push that point across. And then at the end of the day, if they were able to persuade who or what they need to, and if they're able to do that, it becomes law.
Right.
Right? So it is, and it goes with anything in life.
I have it on my list in the Weber.
Yeah, but I'm not
But-
challenging
but-
that.
No. Well, keep in mind. No. All I'm saying is that when life is like a debate, and even things sometimes, a lot of things is not a clear demarcation of whether it is right or wrong. It's whether or not you can persuade the other person to think or see it a particular way.
Yes, I understand that, Webu. That is, yeah. But what I'm trying to get at, though, and I think the central issue is why we do not have enough participation at this level, why people are not free to speak. It is not necessarily because they don't think that they can make their point well enough. It's not necessarily because they don't think that they can convince someone else to change whatever, trajectory they were on. It's not about me trying to get Mr. Brand to change his mind necessarily, but it's for me to let Mr. Brand know that I see things maybe a little differently. Maybe he could take a second look at it, because sometimes a second look, he might see something different, or if he can understand how I feel about an issue, maybe he might build something into that, whatever the intervention is or intended to be. I may be able to hear a view that he may not have been sensitive to before. So it's not about, at the end of the day, whether he's more charismatic or whatever. We can debate. Yes, it's not about winning a debate. It's about people being able to freely engage in the process.
But you would
of
agree.
Discussions.
But you would agree. You can present your view to Mr. Brand, and he listens, but he might end up still holding the same view that he had.
And that is okay.
Right. However, sometimes you may feel that because you told him and he's still held the same view, you might come away feeling that he didn't do what you said, didn't consider what you had to say.
And that is okay too.
Well,
but
but
that is okay too.
No?
It is. It is. All I'm saying is that I want to have that right to be heard. And that is all the discussion is about. It's not about who wins or loses, who changes their mind or
but you
whatever it is.
But you see, the problem we have is the problem we have is this, that when one may argue, yeah, but that is okay. But the point is, though, if it is okay, how come you go away still complaining that they always do that, and when you talk, they don't listen to you, they still do what you feel like?
Because we're human and it's going to happen.
But this is what...
We think we always
you
right.
can't be dishonest about the conclusion. You go away and you know that you're not satisfied with the position you wanted Mr. Brand to hear and ultimately agree to, because you've gone away and Mr. Brand has not agreed, and you're peeved. You're ticked off simply because you have not been able to convince him against his will.
But that's okay too.
It can't be okay when you're not satisfied.
No, but you're straying away for the central issue. The issue is whether or not
have the right to speak.
People can speak, their voices be heard. You hear a grievance or whatever it is, or an idea, whatever. You don't have to do what I say.
That's the
you
simplest
don't have
part
to.
of it.
But then just don't tomorrow say, oh, if I give you a project, you say, well, who she think she be? Because I had criticized the fact that you did something that I didn't agree with. That is what the central issue is.
You can't be dishonest about this, the conclusion of this.
What you
I'm telling you, I'm saying to you, you're going to come up with a point or a counterpoint to Mr. Brand's. And then if Mr. Brand doesn't buy your point, you're going to just say, oh, that's okay.
Okay, Mr. Stanley, let me just take this. Good evening, thank you for holding.
I'm not missing it.
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Yes, Mr. Hubbard, right to your point. Take for instance, you have, like you say, you make statements that is honest about certain things with policies, and then their repercussions. Look at the gang. Isn't that the same way they operate, the same hatred? I just want the general public to think about it. Look at the way government function when people oppose them. Look at the way gang members function when the opposing member oppose them. And look at the repercussions.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you think they should function when you oppose them?
Have discussion, leave there with forgiveness.
Okay, so in other words, if you have a discussion with Mr. Stanley about something you don't agree with, the both of you must leave there forgiving one another?
Even after discussion, after you have a heated discussion.
Yeah, but that's what I'm asking, is yes or no. So if... Walk with me.
Yes.
So if you have a discussion with Mr. Stanley on an issue, regardless to the outcome, the two of you must leave there forgiving one another. That's what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I got you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we ought to be mature enough to say, okay, we agreed to disagree and leave it there. Don't, because I have a different view to you, tomorrow morning I cannot eat bread. That's not right.
But we agree that is intrinsically how it is.
But
Let me give you a light moment. When they were doing the Bat Bridge down there, they seemed to have made some mistakes. So I went down there and I asked a few questions, which pointed out the errors. And then in getting the explanation, I realized I was getting some mumbo jumbo. I started to smile. And I get some heavy backlash because of it. But the mistake was made. It ended up really was corrected. Not on account of my conversation. But what I'm saying is, I got backlash as a consequence.
And that wasn't right.
But the point is, it happened.
Yeah, but
Good evening, thank you for holding.
Real quick. Racism is not hereditary. It's passed on. Fear is in the same light. I'm not talking about just fear. Fear is the fear of expressing yourself, fear of being independent, fear of all kinds of things is passed on because of lack of education. Thanks, though.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I have to agree with Dr. Bartlett. Earlier on, I spoke about my former principal of the Charleston Secondary School, who used to say to us all, there are as much opinion as there are men and women. And what he was trying to convey to us was that we should respect one another's views. And I think we have to reach to a stage where people accept what you have to say and appreciate what you have to say and don't get opposed to it. Like I said, when I spoke to Dr. Martin, I distinctly said to him, some of your views I don't agree with, but you have a right to express them. And I appreciate what he was saying. I don't necessarily agree with him, but I'm not hostile to him. And I think that's where we need to reach as progressive people. We need to accept that everyone is entitled to an opinion, and that opinion needs to be respected. And once you reach that stage, Rebel, I think we are making progress.
I think that it shows the maturity that you would have had in the conversation and the discussion, because you would have probably argued your point and your point of view, and then I think it goes. He
argue his and I argue mine, and I expect.
Well, the conclusion should be devoid of hostility.
Yeah, but when people
at the same time, if it is wrong, if an opinion is wrong, you should not feel that the person opposing.
Well, who is going to say it's wrong?
There is a wrong and a right.
How can you come to a conclusion that somebody's opinion is wrong?
I have
sure
an
you
opinion.
can.
You have an opinion.
If you have the knowledge and background to make a determination as to what the man is saying, you can make a determination as to whether or not he's right or wrong. And you can't tell me that I am speaking mumbo jumbo here. If you are in a position to make the determination because of your background, knowledge, wisdom, experiences, as the case might be, you can conclude you are dead wrong. There's no need for hostility. And in that regard, it can be left there, but one must be told conclusively
that they're wrong.
That they're wrong. And show them where they're wrong.
They have a different
because
perspective.
Here,
sometimes
let's take
data is what is going to determine.
It depends. Look at this thing with the Brexit in England now.
Let me get Naya in.
This thing with Brexit in England.
Let me get Naya in.
When the desire to speak is suppressed, I think that's the groundwork for dictatorship. The question is whether or not the desire to speak is suppressed sometimes around here or in regional society and so forth. And I think so, and I think it's not just the policies of the government, but I think it's politicians enjoy that, Webo, when people are not alive and strong enough to speak, I think. And as I say, it's the groundwork for dictatorship, Webo. Now, for instance, in Nevis, to me, if the more government controls people's life in terms of creating employment for them, because government is huge in Nevis. Government seems like they want to employ everybody, and again, the incentives are such, a lot of people seem to want to work for government. And the more that is so, the less people will speak out, because people have to deal with their bread and butter issues. And I think that the politicians are aware of that. They're totally aware of that. And for this culture to change, they need to make that step. Come on the radio and make that promise and live up to it. That yes, we are encouraged now, more feedback from the people, more debate from the people, and they should not be afraid of the consequence,
Naya, I challenge you that if you're referring to politicians and under a broad heading, but I challenge you, they're not an awful number of them. I challenge you, if you take them one by one and ask, is it you? No. Is it you? No. And you'll get the same chorus till you come to the end of the line. I challenge you with that.
Yes. But government is responsible to make the enabling environment for people to be employed, because people have to produce. You have to earn
but not
a living.
Necessarily to be employed
and
by the
therefore,
government.
the government has a two-tier system. One, the private sector, and the public sector.
The stronger the private sector, the more
Well,
people.
what I'm saying is the government is there to create policies, to create the enabling environment for people to thrive in the private sector.
Good.
And if the private sector cannot pick up all the slack, the government obviously has to
pick up the
slack and create employment for people. Now, what is wrong about that? What is so wrong about it? I don't see anything wrong about it.
But nothing is
people
wrong about
expect employment.
Well, people expect employment.
People expect
but
to
the point
produce
I'm
and
making,
expect to
the more
have
people
something.
are working for government, is the less you will find people participating in debates. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. But it's because of the consequence of speaking out. In this little small society, the more government employ people, it's the worse the situation is going to get.
Look, there are people who put...
No, we got to face the reality. We are sitting
restraint
here
on
and we can
themselves
say
not to
anything
speak.
about people participating, but the reality is, Rebel, you know, at the end of the day, you know, people want to be able to live, people want to be able to feed their family, and the consequences are such that that would be affected. People have to think twice, you know, and yes, if the private sector was more vibrant, you'd have more people willing to and able to actually express their opinion, because they are not directly dependent on government's employment. And government, I mean, let's look at this culture of hands out when it comes to election. You know, I mean, it's the politician who encouraged this. I mean, they can go and give $500 to this, $500, and of course, this seems to like have that obligation that when we got to employ you, and the people expect that too. And it leads to a situation where the people are not free. And that's why the ingredients of dictatorship seem to step into place here.
Well, let me ask you this, Naya. If I were to say to you, you have a cliff out there, go out there and take a head dive, and you likely know what will happen to you, you would do it?
No.
Well, I want to.
No.
So
what does that mean, Rebel?
Huh?
What does that mean?
You can't tell me what it means because you answered. So
Yeah,
you
but,
can't.
I mean,
But you can't tell me what your answer means.
I might take a head dive, but I might just use a parachute. I don't know. So
you know the consequences, and you're not going to do it. You know the consequences, and you're not going to do it, and therefore you have to.
You made the point for me, Mr. Stan.
You have to.
You know the consequences of speaking up, and you're employed by the government, and then you know you.
But there are people who put on self-restraint. There are people who will never speak, no matter how they are oppressed, if you want to call it that way.
Let me go a little further. If our people are so brilliant and articulate and all that, and we know that the reason why they're giving us this enticement is to trap us, we take it and still get trapped?
Shouldn't. But you take it,
some people trap
and maybe the entrapment was self-imposed.
Walk with me. Walk with me. I said, if we know, you notice the first example that I used? You heard what Naya's answer was? No, I won't do it. Okay. I use a different example. So if you know that this little handout
self-entrapment
is self-entrapment, you take it and get entrapped? And then complain?
You shouldn't.
Well, if there's benefit to be earned from being entrapped,
that's gullibility.
For 5 years. I mean, come on.
So then what are you complaining for? You got the benefit.
I don't know where you're going with that, but there's some people who take it and don't vote anyways.
No, but the point I make, no, well, I'll tell you where I'm going.
Okay.
I am saying that you knowingly did it. There's a difference, for instance, between manslaughter and murder, isn't it, Ted?
Right.
Murder, right? You premeditated, you knew, and so they give you no mercy. Manslaughter, it was
Not intended.
Not intended. So they look at it differently. So, once more, you know that it is entrapment. You are brilliant, 98% literate, and you see Mr. Brand come in with the $500. He gives you, and then you know that after you get it, he is going to oppress you. And you say, well, okay, go back there.
I don't know if that happens to everybody. You take it and vote for Naya.
No, I
Some
didn't
people take
say.
it and
I
vote for
didn't
Naya.
say it
They'll get
happened.
entrapped.
I didn't say it happened. All I did is put a scenario. Edric, you have the last word.
I just felt that what has happened to Brexit, Boris Johnson misled the people, and they swallowed hook, line, and sinker, and now they're going to pay the price big time.
That's the last word from Edric W. Stanley, Ted Hobson, Conrad Nye Liebert, Dr. Patricia Bartlett, the Honorable Spencer Brand. This program repeats tomorrow at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Brantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On the Mark. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community. Talk that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.
The views and opinions